A small-town family in Florida were victims of a brutal murder with no signs of a clear killer. Despite the disturbing evidence at the scene and over 500 suspects interviewed, their murderer remains at large. Today we discuss the Walker family murders. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and a sprinkling of supernatural phenomenon. Every now and then, it's just around the corner. I am your resident mystery enthusiast, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
You thought we were gonna go away, but just like the flu, we keep coming back.
A new iteration, slightly
new strain.
different. Gotta get a new vaccine to hold us off.
I'll be honest, that just flew out.
I can tell. I love it. Just like the flu, eat your apples, folks, or Red Web's coming for you. So we have a true crime case now, back in the saddle of it's a pretty gruesome one. We have some trigger warnings, topics to put in the description, as always, when we get into these more sinister cases.
Yeah, I assume it was as much when you use the word family.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting. 500 suspects interviewed. I think that's the thing that stands out to me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a lot.
It's like the town, essentially.
Like, what happened? Where did this, can you know what I mean? Like, there's certain, where did this happen and how did this happen, essentially, to kind of, garner that many suspects?
Yeah.
Or is it just the police were that lost? I don't know.
Great instincts. Great questions. We'll see what we get into. But, as always, some business to attend to. Red Web, as we all know now, in this new season, is fully independent, and that is thanks to you guys in the task force. There are a few ways to support us. Of course, you can continue to review us, share us with your friends, anybody that is a mystery lover in your life that you want to talk about these cases with. But we now have a Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/redweb. Fredo, let's list what they can get.
Yeah, we've got the podcast ad-free.
100%.
We've got a movie club tier for those of you guys that love the movies.
We're always talking about horror movies, so we figured we'd make a whole show out of it and continue that for patrons. We also have things like you can preview the topics early in advance. You can take a look at some bloopers, some clips, some of the stuff that doesn't make it into the episode. And we're also thinking about a few other things, but that's what we got right now. And if you want to be shouted out in the episode, you can, at various tiers of the patronage model, you can enter the pool to be pulled randomly. And if you're a squonk level, let me just say this, if you're squonk level.
Damn.
Yeah. If you are squonks, thank you.
I'll high five. I won't look at you.
Right.
But I'll high five you.
Right. We don't want to melt you. But we will give you that sloppy little swamp high five.
Yeah.
And speaking of shout outs, it's just come across my desk here at the Task Force headquarters. I have a few squonks here I want to shout out and some Task Force members. We've got Andy Schrock, Alex Tuck, Sabrina Hall, Zarathustra, Mitch W., and Jarrett Osborne coming in strong as our wet and sloppy squonks of the swamps.
Oh, we got a bunch of little squonks at HQ.
We got a lot of little squonks.
Look, they're all in the little room with their robes, just chanting around a circle of candles. They got their little name tags. It's on their back, so that way you don't look at them.
It's true. It's true.
Just, you know what? I'm gonna just crack the door open a little bit. Stick my hand in for a high five. That way I don't look at them, and then we're good.
I heard it too. It was sloppy.
That was moist.
But yeah, we have a whole floor on the HQ that we've just dug out, and it's dedicated to the Squonk member Swamp. They have their own Discord channel, so they can get in there. They got special spectral glasses, so they can look at one another and not melt. But I also want to shout out some of our task force members who joined in day one. Thank you all so much for being task force members. We got Colin Parker, Tac PK, Alyssa Wilensky, and Ren Wes, and so many others. But again, we'll be doing shout outs every week.
Thank you for supporting us on Patreon.
But yeah, go to, again, patreon.com/redweb to take a look at the tiers. Again, it is the best way to support us now that we're independent, and we're going to need your support to continue doing the show. We love doing this. We love our mysteries. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about this grisly case. Let me wind you all the way back. December 20th, 1959. Don McLeod arrived at the Walker family home in Osprey, Florida around 5:30 a.m. He and Cliff Walker had decided the previous day they were going to go hog hunting early in the morning. Now, they had seen plenty of hogs on the Palmer family land. This is where they land. In fact, they lived on the Palmer family land, trading labor for, I say, air quotes, free housing or free land to live on. So they were essentially neighbors in that way. Now, that morning, McLeod found it odd that when he woke up and went outside that there were no lights on in the Walker house. Since Cliff was usually a very early riser, he would see at least the kitchen light on. So he approaches the house. He doesn't smell the normal smell of coffee wafting from the window. He knocks on the door and no one answers. Even still, he looks down and he sees, just a few days before Christmas, the Christmas tree is still lying on the ground on the porch. McLeod then tries to open both the front and back doors, and this is when he notices a small light inside. It looks like a light or maybe a flame even, he said. He worried that they may have forgotten to turn the pilot light off on the stove, so he's thinking, oh my gosh, the reason the lights are off is because maybe the family succumbed to carbon monoxide poisoning. Because of this, McLeod broke the screen door, rushed inside, immediately finding a grisly scene. Cliff's wife, Christine Walker, was on the ground in a pool of her own blood. Looking up, McLeod saw Cliff and their son Jimmy collapsed and covered in blood, slumped in the corner of the very same room. All three of them seemingly had been shot dead. At this point, McLeod left the scene to contact authorities, having touched nothing and only seen what he's seen, ran off to get police.
Man, I would still... One, that's something that like just traumatizes you for the rest of your life. You can't unsee that. And then two, there's just a secondary fear of like, well, by default, I will be questioned, and good chance that I could be a suspect.
100%.
And it's just like, that's just the authorities doing their due diligence. Like obviously the person that found it, like you got to question the hell out of them, and you got to suspect everyone until you clear them. But that's just so much to have to deal with, like you're coming across your it seems like a good friend, right? Well, and his family, they've all been murdered, and then all of a sudden you're going to be questioned heavily.
Oh my God, yeah.
About that.
Especially since
because I get to put my mind in these situations, and like that's just terrible.
Terrible sight to behold.
That's hard to deal with.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
That being said, if I ever go and I know my demise is coming, I'm just gonna write it says Christian did it.
I've got mine pre-printed.
Yeah,
it's in my
same.
pocket. Yeah,
so that way it's very much clear cut.
Yeah, you got one of those too, Christian? Oh wait, he's right here.
Yeah, he's right here. It just seems like initial thoughts, since they're all in the same room, that someone broke in, even though as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's any signs of like forced entry.
Right. That's the weird part. He's trying both the front and back door. Things are locked. He's not. He doesn't see any broken windows or anything.
Yeah, but they're all in the same room, which makes you think someone broke in and then like gathered everybody and stuffed them into a room.
Yeah, 100%. The only other thing, kind of going off your point, obviously the police are going to say, well, you're the first on scene. You're going to be suspect number one, especially since, his story is he saw a flame. He thought maybe it was a pilot light. I got to get in there and check on the family. Cuts open the screen door, kind of himself breaks in.
Yeah.
And so now that seems like the only broken in point of entry to the very same scene. So yeah, you immediately, your heart drops for many reasons. Of course, your friend, his whole family, gone. And now you, in this wild conflation of emotions, are now perhaps implicated into this scene. So I can't imagine like being a suspect to an emotional scene like that, and you're just like all nerves, all like, I don't know anything. I know you want something, and you think it's me, but I just can't imagine being in that position.
Also, like this is not the situation here, but like imagine, going in, it's like a close friend or someone you love or whatever, and they're like on the ground, they're still alive. Maybe they have a knife in them or something like that, and it's like, do you take it out? Do you not take it out? Like you get your fingerprints on it, or you contaminate evidence?
Or are they going to bleed out?
Yeah, they're going to bleed. It's like, damn. Like, what do you even do in that situation?
Right.
Hold on, let me get a pair of gloves.
I feel like I need a pager that's like just got like a quick flip switch to call 911. you know?
Yeah.
Just so I can like at any moment trigger it right away because
can't you like put your watch or your
you
phone?
can like triple hit the
turn that
button.
setting on and then just like jump on your back real hard.
Wait, jump on your back like an armadillo?
So like if you want to try to trigger it right away.
Oh, you're talking about your watch. I thought you meant your phone with like the emergency button thing. But so like if you fall, it just calls automatically?
I think there's a setting, yeah.
I'm too clumsy for that.
If not, there's definitely apps.
Yeah, I've stubbed my toe too many times.
Hard spell, automatically call 911.
Yeah.
But then you could just be throwing your body around the room and it's not calling me.
They're not calling.
We're going to just call yourself, actually. Now that I think about it, that doesn't quite work out in my head.
You're repeatedly dropping on the floor, smashing into walls, and they're like, nah, it's the boy who cried wolf again. It's the boy who slammed walls again.
It's just Christian on the floor, suffering, and us throwing ourselves around the like
Don't
room,
worry, they'll be here soon.
Launching yourself off the mattress. It's not working.
Just dial 911.
Yeah, just dial the damn number, dude.
Yeah. I look up, he has a rotary phone. I go, I don't know how. Okay. Yeah, it's a very grisly scene and super unfortunate because as we'll come to find out when we talk about the investigation, there really isn't a lot to go off of. And so the intrigue in this particular case really spikes during kind of the theories, the search for the suspects. But before we get further, I want to go back because the only way to move forward is to kind of get more context to what was going on in the family's lives, what the timeline might have looked like, because there's a few elements here, right? Just the day before, the Walker family traveled to Sarasota, Florida to look for a used car for Christine. Osprey is kind of like a suburb to this Sarasota area, maybe a few-minute drive up the coast. This is the last known account of what the family was doing prior to the tragic murder, offering us what little context we could have on this cold case. Christine had been driving a 1952 Plymouth. The couple reportedly were interested in a 1956 Chevrolet 210 or a Hudson Jet. The family ended up going home empty-handed. They paused at their ranch barn to pick up cattle feed, and at the ranch barn, they met with Don McLeod, the aforementioned friend of Cliff's that found the scene and fellow ranch hand. Cliff and Don went to go hunt while Christine and the kids stayed behind with McLeod's wife. Christine ended up driving home first with Cliff and the kids following later in Cliff's work Jeep. So this kind of provides some context to the scene that we're going to kind of open up in the investigation and it gives you some context in the theories too. So of course, when Sarasota County Police first arrived at the scene, they found what McLeod had initially reported, everything that we described. There was also a bloody footprint from a cowboy boot and a cigarette. The latter is notable because friends of the family knew that the Walkers were not smokers. Shell casings for a .22 caliber gun were found on the scene, and Christine's shoe was found covered with blood. Things took a turn for the darker when police looked into the bathroom. Again, I refer to the trigger warnings for this episode. Some more graphic material ahead. This one's personally very brutal in my opinion, but there they found baby Debbie, seemingly drowned, but also with gunshot wounds. In addition to this, it became clear to investigators that Christine had been sexually assaulted due to a semen sample being found in her pants. Upon further investigation, it appeared the suspect had stolen Cliff's pocket knife, Christine's high school uniform, and the couple's marriage certificate that had been framed and hung up on the wall.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, pocket watch, sure, that could be
pocket knife.
Pocket knife,
Yeah.
that could be valuable, I guess. Like I don't.
Yeah, or maybe part of the crime. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't think any stab wounds were found here.
Like a marriage certificate?
Yeah,
What?
I'm wondering if like
I'm confused. I mean, at that point, I'm thinking some kind of affair or obsessive like parasocial like stalker or something like that.
100%.
Like that's just. I'll be honest. That's one of the weirdest. We've covered a lot of episodes. It's one of the weirdest things to have stolen.
Yeah, especially and remember, kind of going with your initial instincts here. Christine's high school uniform. She was about 24 at this time.
Yeah.
So high school, maybe 6-7 years in the past. Maybe she graduated. So it's not super old. So maybe this was someone that knew her in high school.
That's what I would think, because it's got to have some type of like significance to the person.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. This is me. Maybe they're big brain, and you You know what I mean? You go to the crime scene, you start taking a bunch of random stuff.
Right.
Then all of a sudden you got people like us sitting here like, why did he take that?
Right.
And it's
You
just
throw
like,
them off.
Yeah, it just completely throws them off.
It is a weird thing. I feel like the marriage certificate is notable because if the family is known in the area that that's something that they have, sure. How they figure out specifically the pocket knife and the high school uniform are gone, that is a thorough search. I commend the investigators looking that thoroughly.
That's true. How would you know that?
Like, no one would know if I have a high school Letterman jacket or not. I mean, they look at me and they go, nah, for sure he doesn't. But I don't have that build, you know? But it's interesting. So this either tells me that it is a very tight-knit community where a lot of people knew about one another.
That's true.
And or that the investigators were very thorough. I would like to think both, right?
Yeah.
But I think your instincts are totally accurate. Because it is an eclectic selection of things. And I'm wondering, to your point, if the pocket knife has maybe more story behind it, maybe if it was a gift from Christine to Cliff, or...
True.
You know?
I mean, 2 out of the 3 seem like it's just someone that was obsessed with them or Christine in general. And yeah, the pocket knife could have been a sentimental thing. And it went, no.
Yeah. Or a trophy in some sick way. I don't know. But I love where your head's at. Those are great initial thoughts that we'll dive into. But on the night of the murders, at least 7 men had been seen fishing at a nearby creek, and another 3 had been seen hanging out near the road that led to the Walker's house. So immediately, the pool for suspects is going to cast a wide net here. Even Don McLeod was a suspect, of course, since he was the first one on the scene. Accordingly, he was asked to take a lie detector test, and he passed. Of course, we've talked about lie detector tests many times in the past. Jury's still out on the accuracy of a lie detector test.
Yeah.
It is one of many tools that a properly trained investigator can use to try to suss out the truth, but it isn't foolproof, right?
No.
According to the Herald Tribune, he was asked the same questions as any other suspect. Questions about Christine, questions about a potential .22 caliber gun, things about drowning, right? Basically very specific questions regarding the scene. The nearest neighbor to the Walkers was also a suspect, a man by the name of Wilbur Tooker. He lived about a mile from the family's home and was reportedly seen at the house over 24 times and had a history of sexually harassing Christine, pressuring her, flirting with her, doing all, like trying to grope her, touch her, like a lot of eyebrow-raising stuff.
Yeah, inappropriate stuff.
Very inappropriate. He was also seen outside the house the day of the murder, yet had somewhat of an alibi. So again, per the Herald Tribune, it seemed that detectives retraced Tooker's steps that day. Most of his day was accounted for except for the small moments between the hours of 4 and 5 p.m., around the time that the Walkers were thought to have been killed. After which, he was at a dinner with a friend in Sarasota from 5 to 7 p.m., and then at Bradenton High School no later than 7:45 p.m. to play the violin with the West Coast Symphony Orchestra. Now, investigators looked all over this high school to talk to people that might have known him, asked if he acted strangely, because if he had done the murders, it would have been before this. Did he play differently? Did he act differently? And honestly, no joke, they said, no, he played just as terribly as he usually does. And so it's hard to know if he was suspicious or not, you know? Ultimately, Tooker died in March of 1963, so we may never know if he was the culprit fully or what he was doing between the hours of 4 and 5, but a lot of people keep him heavily on the suspect list just purely because of his, just to very much simplify it, creepy and inappropriate relation with Christine and proximity to the property. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the theories some more.
They interviewed him, did they not?
They must have, right?
They must have. I don't think you said they did, but I feel like they must have.
I don't have that in my notes, Christian, actually. But I imagine they did because they talked to the people around him and they talked to his friend who he had dinner with.
Like they must have interviewed him.
Like they know his friend was a dentist and that's who he had dinner with. But
because the point I'm getting at is...
what did he say?
What did he say he was doing between those times?
It's a great question.
You know?
Yeah.
But then again, this is what, 1958? So you're
59,
starting to get 59. You're starting to get into the realm of telephone and things getting lost to time.
Right.
From everything we could find, there's all sorts of records about what we're saying, people saying to investigators what Tooker was doing, but I couldn't find anything about them actually talking to Tooker himself.
Yeah, same. I mostly found basically all the details around him, but no questioning, no kind of insight as to questions to him, which is
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah.
Not sure if it's withheld or if they just never spoke with him, but that would be weird.
I mean, as of right now, it seems like the authorities were very thorough.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I believe that they did.
Mm-hmm.
I have no reason to believe otherwise. And I just feel like it might be, confidential or
Yeah.
something like that.
If he's heavy enough of a suspect for a cold case and then he passes away and so they can't like rule him out or rule him in, yeah, maybe it just stays
Yeah.
classified. I don't know. So at this point, with no real answers, nearly everyone in town had become a suspect. Police looked at over 2,000 fingerprints, performed countless lie detector tests, and tested more than 75 guns to compare the marks made by different firing pins. We've talked about that in kind of previous episodes before, but the firing pin, the part that hits the back of the bullet, ignites the gunpowder, sends the projectile. Different guns can have different kind of fingerprints, as it were.
Yep.
And so they're testing all these different weapons to see, okay, well, which 22 caliber weapon might have been used? Maybe we can use that to narrow down on somebody local who has that specific weapon. They even consulted, by the way, a psychic to exhaust any possible leads that would find new clues, new suspects, new anything.
Interesting.
I mean, yeah, so they're being very thorough.
It's also like, can you really? I mean, yeah, sure, maybe a new lead, but
Mhm.
I mean, that will hold up in court. I
Right,
don't
right.
feel like.
Well, so how did you get onto this lead, even though the evidence is very strong?
Yeah.
Well, someone kind of said
Had a-
something. They said red hair in Georgia.
Yeah. They had a vision.
Right.
It's like, okay.
It's like when
Oh,
John
weird.
Edwards looks at the crowd and he goes, I'm getting like a Don? No, maybe a D, a Daniel.
Yes.
No, okay, fine. It's a Dennis. Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Someone's like, David? Yeah, David.
Right. My
yeah.
grandson's name is Davidson.
Yep.
And it just
yep,
keeps evolving.
crying for something.
But speaking of previous cases, the Monster of Florence case that we talked about in the past was another case where the gun's firing pin left a unique mark. And I think that one, the gun had a malformation that really helped dial in the specific model of the weapon. But either way, suffice to say, investigators are being very thorough. And in my humble opinion, if they're seeking a psychic, it means they've exhausted every material path they have. And they're just looking for any reason to go find other paths to walk, right? So Sheriff Ross E. Boyer, the officer who enlisted the help of the psychic, followed up on several leads that pointed to multiple different states outside of Florida. Months later, a new piece of evidence finally surfaced. Bloodied clothes belonging to the Walkers were found in a shed just a few miles from their home, though unfortunately it seemed that this was yet another dead end, that the evidence led nowhere.
Dang. Bloody clothes?
I know!
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's probably way too much time has passed for I don't know, footprints or
Yeah.
anything like that.
I
Damn.
mean, seasons have changed. Yeah, it's just,
yeah.
I'm thinking you figured out it's their clothes, that they're bloodied. You figured out it's in a shed, but when I was talking with Jillian, we just couldn't find whose shed it was, where specifically it was. It's one of those times, again, where sometimes the cases we talk about are amped up only because the lack of information that's public
Yeah.
can then lead to further theories. But it's just, I was so hopeful that this would lead to something,
Yeah.
but nothing whatsoever. The case then passed through many hands over the many years, leaving a long run of officers baffled at the intensity of this crime, yet the lack of solid leads. In 2005, Captain Ron Albritton told the Herald Tribune that he feared the case would only be solved by something like a deathbed confessional. We've seen those before
Yeah.
to varying levels. So, again, some people are always like, I did it, and have no reason
Yeah.
to be saying it.
Yep.
But to this day, we don't have one such deathbed confessional. And in the end, although investigators listed 587 people as suspects, the case ultimately remains cold.
Damn. I mean, there's really nothing to go off of.
No, dude.
It was unfortunate. I use the word cleanly done. Like a lot of times cases are solved just because massive slip ups, right? They had their phone and the GPS was pinging their location the whole
Right,
time,
right.
or they decide to comb their hair with one of the brushes. So we have a
Dude.
bunch of, you know what I mean? Like just
Some crazy
really,
cool stuff.
Yeah, just really dumb
not,
things.
not back here in the 50s and 60s. You know?
No, it was just like it happened and then nothing was left behind.
Yeah.
It's just so weird too, the stuff that was taken.
Yeah.
I just can't, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like they were scrubbing the place for evidence too. Like, we'll talk more about that bloodied shoe, but that was very prominent. You know, we have the bloody footprint. Whoever was doing this must have been smoking a cigarette and just flicked that off into the crime scene. So it's like, whoever this was, it was almost like it wasn't intended to be some sort of clean deal. But, you know, it raises a good question, you know, with the advent of technology and science, forensics, I should say, crimes have gotten either more sophisticated to dodge some of these things, or we've gotten better at kind of figuring it all out. I'm almost wondering if like the mid-century, the mid-1900s are going to be this like spike, this moment in time where true crime really like hit its stride of like people doing real dark, sinister stuff and then just kind of casually walking away and never being caught.
Yeah.
Even when they're loud, right? They're like, again, I always refer to the Zodiac, but like they send messages taunting the police. We've had many cases like that. And then still they don't get caught. It is wild.
I feel like that's around the time where technology unfortunately wasn't sophisticated enough, yet like these types of, this whole genre, right, of like murder mystery was starting to get glamorized.
Yeah.
So I think
it hit headlines.
From there, you're hitting headlines and you're having these people kind of like take this to the next level.
That's a great point.
And the technology just wasn't quite there yet. And you know, I've talked about this a handful of times. I just feel like the further back you go, the easier it is to get away with something like murder, unfortunately.
100%. I think you're onto something. It does feel like this, and again, in some dark way, this magical moment where headlines, the world has never been more connected, right? 1950s, 1960s. Yeah. Headlines could spread globally like that, finger snap. And yet they aren't advanced technology-wise enough to solve the crimes. And so, yeah, you have copycats after copycats wanting their name spread, wanting their pseudonym spread, whatever. Maybe not in this case. This doesn't seem like a serial killer.
Right, yeah.
But you do have a lot of serial killers in this like this weird window. And maybe that's exactly why.
Yeah.
It was such a hot spot.
Weird time.
Yeah.
Where it was prime time for bad people to do bad things.
Yep. Because I'm sure there's like countless cases like this through history that we just don't know and we'll never know.
Oh,
because it's like, well, that's really sucky, but
yeah, someone came in.
The end.
You know, especially if like someone comes in, fires a gun, just leaves.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, especially during the 1950s. How do you solve that?
Yeah.
You know, if it's a random person that just drove 4 or 5 states, entered a random house, did the terrible thing, and then just left.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
Right. Especially when you're like, well, there's 7 guys over there, 3 guys over there, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Pop by, no one saw me.
Yeah.
There's just like,
yeah. Which I've talked about it a handful of times, which terrifies me. Like, how do you catch someone that like just randomly shoots a sniper rifle bullet into like a festival crowd?
Ugh.
How do you stop? How do you figure that out?
Yeah. Well, then you do some sort of like we talked about a few weeks ago, JFK, right? Hopefully they can do some forensics to trace that path back. And
I'm sure they'll trace the path to the window and the floor, but
then you got to put all of the other clues together.
Right.
Ugh. Wild.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Cato's Coffee. Cato's Coffee offers a wide selection of roasts, single origin blends, and more. And they don't stop at coffee. They also offer curated selections of loose leaf teas for you to choose from. You know, I love tea and I love coffee. I run on caffeine, and they've got a good bean. They've been sending me a couple bags of coffee, and I wake up every morning to a nice cup. Cato's Coffee also offers, by the way, K-Cups, whole bean bags, and a variety of grinds in addition to wholesale sizes. So no matter what you're looking for, Fredo, they've got you covered.
Look, I run off coffee, but I've also come to appreciate tea because I started implementing some warm milk. So I'm excited to get different variety and flavors of teas because, you know, I drink a little lavishly now.
Dude, a little drop of milk in the tea, sends it, just takes it to the next level.
It really does.
And honestly, Task Force runs on Cato's. I'm just going to put that out there. Now, if you also want to show your support for Cato's Coffee, they have a range of merch as well. Now, why is it called Cato's Coffee? The company was started in honor of their CEO's bull terrier, Cato, who grew up on a farm and has been kidnapped 3 times with successful recovery. What a brave dog. And has now retired to the life of luxury and safety with his owner. I love a good story. Cato's Coffee aims to donate a portion of all profits to help local animal shelters and the environment. Again, Task Force runs on Cato's Coffee. If you want some, visit www.catoscoffee.com and find something to suit your taste today. That's KATOSKOFFEE. Whether it's taste buds or a taste in fashion, Cato's has something for everyone. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. When life goes so fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and make adjustments for the rest of the year. Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months. Here's what I like about it. I have always struggled with my approach to therapy, and BetterHelp is an amazing tool to get you started on the road to finding the right person. Because finding the right person is huge, it's daunting, but it's essential for an effective therapy experience. I also really enjoy the fact that their website is approachable. Again, I've always been overwhelmed with the idea of starting therapy, and their questionnaire makes it very simple to start. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Take a moment. Visit betterhelp.com/redweb today to get 10% off your first month. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/redweb.
Moving into the theories now, the police had kind of high-level ideas. Again, with so many suspects, there isn't like one to really point at. And their main theory was that someone who had a crush on Christine had committed the murders, or in other words, a stalker.
Yeah.
Despite being married, Christine garnered attention from several men. Some rumors claim that Christine flirted with these men too. Again, these are rumors. Either way, it doesn't beget violence. Let me just say that outright.
Yep.
No violence. Authorities had several documented incidents of men propositioning Christine and even sexually harassing her. This is really unfortunate. When Christine had arrived at home around 4 p.m. without her family, remember Cliff and Dawn went hunting after the car shopping that never kind of manifested, and the kids stayed with Dawn's wife while Christine went home around that 4 p.m. time. And notably, her car was found in this spot next to where she normally parks. She normally parks in the same spot every single day. It's her property, right? And that's where she's going to park. It wasn't there. So police theorized that the man who killed her must have already been at the property and happened to park where she parks. Therefore, she would have to park somewhere else and go inside.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Police believe that after being sexually assaulted, Christine was trying to fight off the killer until they somehow ended up in her son's room, where ultimately she was shot. Again, her shoe was covered in blood, and so they believed that that is what she used to fight off her attacker. There were blood splatters that could indicate kind of wide swings, and again, of course, I think it was a heel. It was a shoe with a heel, which would certainly cause some damage when swinging, hence the bloodiness. But that's how police kind of theorized that event went down. From this, she's home alone, this whole scene goes down. They kind of extrapolate their theory. They also believe that Cliff and the children were then ambushed immediately upon entering the home. It's theorized that the killer may have been someone recognizable to the family, which is why they not only shot the husband, but also the kids. People that would have been like, oh, that's so-and-so. But in this moment, I don't want to be recognized by anybody. Also, I've just done this heinous deed. No witnesses. And they, and so it almost seems like if this theory stands, if this is like what happened, it almost seems like the family, the husband and the kids, I should say, arrived
at the wrong time.
At the wrong time. That because they're all in the same room. So it's almost like as this is happening, they come in, then the attacker turns, finishes the deed, and then flees the scene, leaving a footprint. Furthering this theory is the fact that of the few objects stolen from the house were, again, the Walker's marriage certificate and Christine's high school uniform. Perhaps this indicates someone who knew her for a long time, even since high school, or someone who had an unhealthy obsession with this unreciprocated attention. But that's kind of your instincts as well, and I think it stands to great reason that maybe is what happened here.
It's a strong lead in my mind.
Now, while this does seem like a pretty specific profile for a killer, eerily, the murderer on the loose could have been multiple people from the Osprey area. Scarily enough, right? And my heart breaks because Christine seemingly had many run-ins with people like Wilbur, who wanted to, even if it was just flirting with her, seemingly wanted her attention. And so, again, still casts a pretty wide net. In May of 1963, an anonymous individual suggested to the police that their cousin, this anonymous person's cousin named Curtis McCall, may have been the killer because supposedly Curtis and Christine were having an affair. This is all hearsay from an anonymous caller.
Yeah, I was like, there's got to be some hearsay of like an affair with someone. Feels like a standard theory for this.
Yeah. Someone called the police and was like, listen, I want to stay anonymous, but my cousin Curtis McCall.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
Thank you, Steve McCall. Anyway, anonymous person. But anyway, like that was another theory that people leaned on. That was about 3.5 years later that call came in, and McCall had reportedly dated Christine in high school, which is interesting, but he himself denied ever having dated her to the police. He had previously been arrested for assault, so there is some sort of track record here, but he passed a lie detector test. But when they asked him if he had withheld any information or if he had lied during the lie detector test about the Walker case, he said no, right? I didn't withhold anything, I haven't lied. And at that point, the lie detector indicated it was a lie. So again, the lie detector isn't the gospel truth.
Yeah, because then he passed all the questions, and then the last big question at the end, he failed.
Yeah.
Which undid all the questions.
Right.
Yeah, that's why you can't trust it.
So yes, this guy's got a history with violence. He's got a potential history with dating her, but he denies it, but we don't know because of the lie detector test. Otherwise, this particular lead went cold because they had nothing else to go on.
Yeah, I mean, what else? Especially 3.5 years later, it's like, what? Like, did the guilt get to you? Did you just find out? It's so long,
right? Or like, why did the cousin call at that point?
Yeah,
like, I wish we knew more from this anonymous cousin.
Oh yeah, that's
like,
what I'm saying. Like, why the cousin takes so long?
Yeah, maybe it was like putting the kind of the red web together on the murder board, or maybe just like kind of confession, like, hey, you know, like I just got to come clean about something. They're like, okay, listen, I know you're my cousin and everything, but that is unforgivable.
Yeah, I can't
I'm
let
gonna
that
go
fly.
Make a call.
Make an non-anonymous call.
Right. So this is where the case otherwise feels pretty straightforward. It's an unsolved true crime, but this next theory is really interesting. And because of that, it's wildly popular. It kind of Venn diagrams it in. It combines it in with another case. So let's talk about that. A popular theory is that the criminals made famous by the book called In Cold Blood were the Walker family's killers. So let's talk about that book real quick. In 1966, author Truman Capote released the nonfiction novel detailing the 1959 murder of the Clutters. Different family, same year. A family of 4 living in rural Kansas. The Clutter family murders were committed by 31-year-old Perry Smith and 28-year-old Richard Hickok. They met in prison. And I feel like I've heard this story before. Let me know if this sounds familiar. While they were in prison together, they heard another inmate bragging about a safe filled with cash in the Clutter family home. So after getting out in some way, they then sought this family out, and after murdering the entire Clutter family, they traveled around 10,000 miles across several states for the next 6 weeks and were finally apprehended and arrested when the inmate who told them about the safe said, hey, wait a minute. I don't know how they caught wind of this, but they told the police, said, hey, I had just told these 2 dudes about it, and they're no longer in prison anymore. It's got to be them. And so they were arrested. Due to the similar nature of both crimes, Kansas detectives actually reached out to Sarasota sheriff and said, hey, you might want to add this to your investigation. And this was only a few weeks after the investigation had begun. The sheriff had photos of Smith and Hickok and displayed those in the newspaper as potential suspects. And reportedly, at least 4 people had recalled seeing the men around various parts of town on the day of the murders. Now, to me, this could be leading. It could be creating false memories.
Yeah. And you're like throwing it
But-
out there to like suspects in this big town murder. People are like, I think I saw that person with brown hair. Like,
We want answers, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe you're inclined to be like, maybe I did see that person.
oh man, I think you just need way more than that.
Just go grocery shopping one time. Come back to me and give me 5 vivid profiles. You're just not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And so if I showed you a relatively average person, you might be like, yeah, maybe I saw them there.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of where my gut is going, but it does intrigue me. So the day after the murders, 3 other witnesses said that they had seen these same 2 guys in a nearby town of Nocatee. One was reported to have a, quote, scratched up face, end quote, and detectives, had said to look out for suspects with cuts because of the retaliation, the fight back with the shoe, etc. They thought that might align with what they saw at the scene. Again, this could be leading, or maybe it's just serendipitous that it is them and it all kind of coalesced with eyewitnesses. What's your take? You going off of that?
I
or
need
you-
more than that.
Yeah,
Especially because it's so leading, right?
yeah. I would also just be like, if you really then firmly believe as investigators that these 2 guys are doing it, put out, what is it, an APB?
APB.
Yeah. Get these guys detained a little bit, interrogate them, do whatever you've been doing with everybody else, and see what you gather,
I mean, there'd
Get some
be some
alibis.
cuts and stuff on them, bruises probably.
Well, I say all this, and that's true. They would have bruises and cuts. That's the big thing to me. Did they
Yeah.
see that stuff in person? But I say this because, luckily, a day after being sentenced to death, the pair was interviewed about the Walker murders. Do we know what
That's-
day that was, Christian? Because basically they did get interrogated at
Yeah.
some point. And
That's a surprising twist.
Yeah. And so they're basically seeking that very same deathbed confession. Like, listen, hey, man, guys, you're going to be put to death. Let's go ahead and talk about this Walker case. You might as well, if you were there, you might as well tell us. So while Christian looks up the date to see if we can find that, they claim that they had never been to Sarasota in the first place. They themselves passed a lie detector test, and because of this, they were no longer considered officially to be suspects. Sarasota Sheriff Rossi Boyer, the original detective that we talked about on the case, was told by Kansas police that Smith and Hickok passed the lie detector test, believing it was someone local. Boyer then turned his efforts onto other suspects and did not investigate the pair much further, basically solidifying, in his mind, their innocence and moved on with it.
Yeah. It's so, I don't know. It's very unreliable, the lie detector test.
Especially in hindsight, but these guys are like raised on this new tech and they go, it must be.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, during those times, right? I'm sure when it came out, it's like this is the hot new thing, and like with anything, and then like as it hits more mainstream, gets out there more, and people start to figure out like the cons of everything.
You know, again, while he's looking into that research, again, a lot of this stuff is flimsy, hard to find, few and far between good articles, right? But so while Christian researches, like, I'm curious what your thoughts are, Fredo. Like, do you think there will be a future, and it feels far-fetched for us now maybe, where DNA evidence itself can be argued because it can somehow be falsified? That someone can not like plant someone's blood with a vial and dump it on the floor, but somehow mess with the results in some way? Like basically drawing an equivalent between the lie detector test in the 50s and DNA analysis now. Do you think that there will be a future where they go, wow, they really relied on that too much? They can use nanobots to change things up. Like,
I
do
don't
you think that could happen?
I don't think the early stages of, or at least not mainstream enough, right? It might be behind closed doors. But I don't think there's we're in a place where early stages of things like nanobots or gene altering to that extent, right? Over the course of over the entire human body is even close to start. You know what I mean? I feel like we haven't hit that spark
Yeah,
in terms of organic technology.
right.
I don't think we're quite there yet.
I don't see it, but boy, does it terrify me.
Oh yeah,
Of being a possible future.
for
You think a
sure.
Minority Report even, and they're like precogs going, I saw you do the crime tomorrow. You're going to jail. You're like, wait, what? Huh?
That's a little terrifying.
I got a day
though.
off. I was going to sleep in, eat Cheetos.
That's a little terrifying. You know?
Mm-hmm.
To literally and then of course that that Tom Cruise movie was just great movie. There was 3 precogs, right? And then one of them would have like a different, like 2 of them would be positive for, murder. And then one would be like, not positive. But then it would be like, nah, don't tell anyone that because it'll ruin the whole, we have so many people locked up. Like this one's giving positives, that ruins the whole system. And then everyone's going to be freed. And, there's some murderers and some not. But yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you rely on something like that? I don't know. Right, because there's always some kind of glitch in the system. There's always some kind of con to everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's people's lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think the tech's there yet.
Not yet.
Not like at least even remotely mainstream.
Yeah, not like
right?
foreseeable.
Yeah.
Who knows? Some like
sure, in a bunker somewhere, they might have some kind of nanobot technology that rearranges the structure of your face or something.
Oh gosh.
But
James
like,
Bond style.
Yeah, but nothing that's like even remotely mainstream or I would think dark web.
Yeah, it's like Prey, Michael Crichton's Prey, where nanobots just kind of take on a life of their own and swarm. Anyway, what you got, Christian?
So I don't have a date of their conviction, but I do have the date of their arrest and the date of their trial. I don't know if that will help narrow things down.
Let's go for it.
So they were arrested on December 30th, 1959, so 10 days after the murder. And then their trial began on March 22nd of 1960.
Okay. What I was looking for there was to see how many years it had been, by the time that they were sentenced to death, to see if maybe that time softened memories, enabled the lie detector test to be a little even more flimsy. I don't know. I was curious what kind of time had passed, but man, that's a bummer.
I feel like you could sit me down, strap a lie detector test to me, and like the FBI came in, sat you down right now, strap the lie detector test to you, start asking questions.
Yeah, I'm here. Let's do it.
You think you're going to be able to like answer questions without triggering things falsely?
I'll tell you what, they're going to think everything's false.
Out. I'm shaking.
Yeah.
My like heart rate's skyrocketing. Like
they're like, let's get a baseline. This guy's BPM is 150.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, what is your name? Alfredo. False. No, what? What do you mean? What do you mean it's false? What do you mean that's false? That's my name.
Is your name Squonk? No, that's a lie. It is. His name is Squonk.
It'd be all over the place.
Yeah, I feel that. I like when they get that beam of light right in your face and they go, "Where were you on this day?" You're like, "I don't know what's going on, sir."
Yep.
Man, I tell you, they're well trained. Those interrogators, very daunting to like be confronted by something like that.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
What a interesting profession and kind of like brutal one too, to be like an interrogator.
I'd be a real good guy, and then I leave the room for the bad guy to come in,
or even
slam the table
a hardcore interrogator for like the CIA or like FBI.
I couldn't do it.
No, I'm not talking about like good cop, bad cop.
Right. I get you the coffee and then he goes,
like the local cop. I'm talking about like you're interrogating a potential terrorist. Like that is the level of interrogator you are. Like,
woof.
How do you even train like this?
Respect to the people that can do it, man.
Yeah.
I just don't have a stomach for that arena. I just couldn't.
Yep.
Woof. Just thinking about it got my heart rate up. But okay. But now with regards to these two, in 2007, Sarasota officer Kimberly McGath expressed interest in this cold case and continued investigating, believing that Smith and Hickok did have something to do with this case. In December of 2012, police announced their intent to exhume the bodies of Smith and Hickok for DNA analysis. The DNA test compared DNA from Smith and Hickok to the evidence from the Walker family crime scene, but the Walker DNA was so old that they were unable to show definitive results.
Damn it.
Right. It's like decades old.
I had that in my mind. I was like, yeah, bag of DNA evidence and then go back and do it later like some cases have. But too old.
Too old. The DNA had degraded to the point where basically neither a positive nor a negative match could be identified. And the results, because of this partial DNA test and subsequent lack of matches, led to, obviously, we know, it staying cold and no further information being had about Smith or Hickok. But this was then announced to the public on August 2013. Upon further investigation, McGath compiled interesting evidence, though. So let's go through some of that. A detective in Miami Beach discovered that Hickok and Smith had paid $18 for a week's stay at a motel there, but vanished after one day. So they say they haven't been to Sarasota, but they have
on record, been to Miami Beach, about 233 miles or 375 kilometers. Or if you're a car guy like me, a 3.5 hour drive by today's standards. So on the other side of the state.
Good measurement, because that's not a bad drive.
Yeah, not a bad drive, especially if you're saying, I'm going to be here for 7 days. That's our alibi. Let's go to this very specific farm family. Anyway, so interesting. They're in the area around that time period. When finally arrested in Las Vegas, kind of what Christian was saying, Smith had a pocket knife that did resemble the one that Cliff Walker had and was missing from him. Beneath the car seat of the pair's car, officers found a toddler's shirt and a pink jacket, which could have belonged to the children and Christine.
Why would they have that still on them?
Great questions. I mean, is it possible that that was evidence from their confirmed crime and maybe getting conflated with the Walker crime? It's possible.
It's also worth mentioning that we don't know if that toddler shirt and the pink jacket was stuff that did belong to the Walkers. We don't know if there was anything like that missing from the Walkers' home.
Right, exactly. So it could fit the story nicely. It could be the other families, or it could just be coincidence, if you will.
Man, that seems like a major coincidence, though.
It does.
Pocket knife, oh man, that fits in too nicely.
Yeah. Another piece of, so to speak, nicely arrived evidence is that they also found an army gas can and burlap sacks, which could have been from Cliff's military-style Jeep. Again, things that could fit nicely into the story, but we don't have confirmation because, to Christian's point, we don't know if they definitely were the Walkers and then removed or not. However, after many years, all physical evidence, oh my gosh, it's one of those cases. All physical evidence had either been destroyed
Yep, there it is.
or lost by several police departments, and the DNA sample that they did have, was most likely Christine's. So even if they could do the DNA test, that it hadn't degraded or what have you, they basically would have been comparing the suspects to the victim, and so they never would have found an actual positive.
Damn, yeah.
What's interesting enough to kind of close out this theory is that even the handprints taken from Smith and Hickok themselves had been destroyed. So, at the end of the day, even if there were some things to be found here, some loose threads and red webs that hadn't been pulled together, it's not going to be now. It's all gone.
Everything lost to time. Damn.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not much else to say other than in July of 2023, with permission from Christine's brother, the bodies of the Walker family were exhumed. But as far as we could find, we have yet to find any answers. And it's possible, right, that they can use the DNA from relatives of suspects to figure out if, to find trace elements of what gene heritage you've got going on. It is possible that this does close at some point, is all I'm trying to say. But this case will probably be, for a long time, if not forever, remain cold.
Yeah, there's just technology just wasn't up to scuff on that one.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Otherwise, it'd be clean.
Right.
It'd be such an easy case to figure out.
Get in there, a few Q-tips and vials.
Yep.
Bada boom.
And that's it.
Yeah. Wow. It really just I know we've said this many times in the past, Task Force. So if you've been around the block, I'm the old broken record, but it just blows me away how big and almost retrospectively how obvious DNA analysis is, but how big DNA analysis was as a tool that entered the forensic scene.
Yeah.
And almost
Huge.
necessary. And
huge.
Yeah. A necessary answer to this otherwise virality that these crimes were having through the 1900s.
I mean, now it's your digital footprint.
Oh my God, yeah. Pinging, like you said, pinging towers with your cell phone. You can't go to a website, even if I use incognito mode. Nah, dude, they got that data.
No, they still have the data.
And they sold that data.
I mean, you can turn off your phone and it's still pinging.
There was a dude who did a whole thing, and I this is off the rip, so that I don't know the full details, but there was a guy who did a full solo mini doc, basically, or a YouTube video where he took a phone, turned it off, went around town, did his stuff, came back and asked for the data from his phone. And he, even though the phone was off, he kept it with him. He saw where he went and what he the stores he went to and how long he spent there. And so he was just curious to see what the phone does when off. And yeah, for the sake of forensic purposes, hell yeah. For the sake of personal privacy, ooh,
Yeah. I mean, but also at the same time, it's like, as long as, I mean, if that data goes to advertisers, I mean,
You think you deserve a cut? I feel like I give me that cut. You know, you're selling my stuff.
yeah. There's also it's like, okay, cool. I drove to the office. I recorded Red Web. I went to Starbucks and I went home. They already have my home address,
Yeah.
right? They already have like, I don't know, information on me because I signed up for internet. You know what I
Oh
mean?
my God. Yeah.
Like so you're selling it to advertisers?
And your credit card company's gonna know every little
Yeah,
secret.
they're gonna do everything.
Yeah.
I just like, yes, it is terrible. They're selling your data. But as of right now, I because I'm not educated, failed to see how that is a huge detriment to me.
Sure. Everyone's got a take on it, a different comfort level for
Being
sure.
someone that like games online and has all these like, you know, I'm very connected to the internet with social media and all that kind of stuff. Like being that connected online, I just go, okay, so you have my advertising data and stuff like that. Or like these companies like Google and Apple, they have it, they sell it to advertisers.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And it can be a
now
good thing,
that
you know?
the fear there is the data getting to like other people.
Right. That's the sinister side.
That's the sinister side. That's the fear side there.
But sometimes the good thing is they give you an ad for a thing. You go, that's pretty neat. That's a good solution to a specific problem I have.
I'll be
Comfy
honest.
shoes.
I'll be honest. Yeah, I bought a pair of summer shoes and I love them.
They're good
the
shoes.
comfiest shoes I've ever worn.
Let's reach out to them.
Yeah, we should.
I want some Red Web,
Cruising
comfy
style.
shoes.
You know, dog stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I've ordered a lot of really cool dog stuff for the corgis, and that's because they just know my algorithm and stuff like that. So, like, yes, it is ultimately terrible, but as someone that's heavily connected online, that's not the thing I'm worried about.
Sure.
You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
100%. I get that. I understand.
yeah.
It's definitely like a double-edged sword. You know, some people go the extreme. They go mountain men style, go off the grid, build a house, live in
for
Alaska.
sure.
I love watching their videos when they do that. I'm like, you're not off the grid anymore, but I like, you know,
Right.
when I love those living off the grid videos. But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. But this case, sinister one. Thank you guys so much for supporting us through the patronage model. Again, that's patreon.com/redweb. You have ad-free exclusives there, some bonus stuff, things that get cut out of the episode, previews of what's to come. Sometimes we put our outlines up. And of course, if you want to reach for the stars, support the show, become a squonk, that's phenomenal. Thank you. But of course, there are other ways. Now that we're independent, your voice helps us even more than before. So reviewing us helps bolster us and get us surfaced to new viewers. Sharing us with friends, colleagues, people who love mysteries is also essential, because it is the ads behind this show and our Patreon that are 99% of what funds us and fuels this show and enables us to keep exploring mysteries and having a good time with you guys. So thank you so much. And Fredo, with that, I will see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.